Right, hello guys and welcome back. Today I have a Titan build for you that, to be honest, I'm a little late to the party on, and that is because we're talking about Stronghold. Yes, the classic hold block build that I initially wasn't particularly interested in, but it wasn't until recently that I discovered that the Stronghold build actually offers far more than simply just hold block and don't die. In fact, with the right combination of subclass perks, Praxic Blade mods, and most importantly, your set bonus selection, combined with shifting your attitude from a defensive to a more offensive playstyle, this build is seriously a force to be reckoned with and has personally become my favorite Titan build as of late. Before we continue though, I do want to give a massive shout out to the creator known as Stronghold Central, who I just recently discovered and has very much inspired me to spread the Stronghold gospel and give the build a try. Definitely go check out his channel if you want some more in-depth Stronghold content. So without further ado, let's begin. And if you enjoyed today's content, then your like and subscription would be very much appreciated. So first things first, by far the most important piece of a Stronghold build, in my opinion, after having learned everything from the master, is that your set bonus matters the most, and it allows you to become an offensive powerhouse rather than just sit there and block with your sword. So what set bonus is that we are using? It is going to be the full Swordmaster armor set. Now this armor set is earnable from Pinnacle Ops, so all of the dungeon layers or exotic missions from the portal, and we're going to be using the full 4-piece bonus. So let's go through each bonus and explain why it is so good and why it fits the build so perfectly. So first of all, the 2-piece bonus is going to allow you to apply exhaust with melee or sword hits. So if I hit Carl with my sword here, he's going to be severed, first of all, because of the impact core, and he is also going to be exhausted because of the 2-piece set bonus. Exhaust is a 25% reduction in enemy outgoing damage, plus sever, which we will talk about later. Sever is 40%. So with just one swipe of a sword, you have 2 massive damage resist options going out onto an enemy just all the time. It's infinitely refreshable. You can just keep applying it if you're fighting a high health target, for example. Even if the red particles go away on the exhaust, it is still there in the background, so don't worry about that. Then the 4-piece bonus is essentially the cherry on top that closes the loop on the Stronghold experience. So as you may know, with Stronghold, if you are blocking, you get resist times 4 on the left of your screen. However, when you drop your guard, the resist goes away. There is a way of keeping the resist times 4, and it is through the set bonus. So if I show you here, if I turn Carl into hostile mode and we get him to deal some damage to me, now when I drop my guard, I still have resist times 4 on the left of my screen, and I can just keep doing that. If I block here, then I drop my guard, still have resist times 4, and that is exactly what the set bonus does. It allows you to continue that resist for around 3 seconds after dropping your guard, and actually you can refresh the resist if you block again, so you can keep it up indefinitely as long as you trigger it once, which is really cool. It basically perfectly closes the loop on the Stronghold gameplay experience, and I just think that's really cool. And by the way, resist times 4 is a 50% damage reduction from absolutely everything, so we're gonna have that plus other things like woven mail going on, amplified. You know, you guys know Stronghold, it's essentially unkillable, and this makes it even more unkillable. But the nicest part about it is that, as you'll be seeing from the gameplay, it allows you to drop your guard safely and attack in the meantime while keeping the resist that the sword gives you. So not only are we going to be invincible when we are blocking, we are also going to be invincible when we are running around not blocking, which is really nice. So that is the full 4-piece set bonus investment. Very much worth it for this build. No other armor set is even close to worth it compared to the 4-piece Swordmaster. It feels like this set was made for this build. Now, before we continue and talk about subclass things, I do want to mention a couple things. This was, something I didn't know that I learned from a Stronghold Central's video, is that there are other sources of resist that cancel out the resist times 4 that you get from Stronghold. There's basically 2 main ones. The first one is Armorsmith on your artifacts. Do not want to use this build because this one's going to make it so breaking a combatant shield temporarily grants you damage resistance and increases melee damage. Now, which sounds good in theory, and as you can see in practice here, if I break this Centurion shield, I get resist on the left of my screen. However, if I was using the block, so if I went from resist times 4 here and I got damaged by something, in fact, I'll just turn on the setting here so I get resist times 4, and now if I break this guy's shield, it goes down to resist times 1, so it gets overridden. So you do not want to be using this artifact perk because it overrides the stronger damage resist that you just naturally get from the armor set. So that is piece number 1. Do not use Armorsmith, so we're going to take that off. And then for the second, do not use the Ferropotent armor set. That is why we're using the full Swordmaster, because Ferropotent, if you didn't know, also gives you resist times 1 when you heal, and we are going to be healing a lot because we're going to be on Strand Titan. Surprise, surprise. So you don't want to use Ferropotent Parapotent because that is also going to give you resist times on, which is going to override the times 4 resist or any other resist that you would get from Stronghold. So don't use Armorsmith, don't use Parapotent, just go with the full Swordmaster and you'll be good to go. So now let's get into the subclass selection. And as you'll see throughout the gameplay in the video, there are some gameplay segments where I'm using the Strand subclass and there are some where I'm using the Stasis subclass. And in my opinion, both of those are the best when it comes to pairing with Stronghold. The reason being is that they are both very good at giving you additional damage resistance and improving the damage of your sword / giving you good crowd control effects with your sword. And first of all, we are going to be talking about Strand because in my opinion, I think Strand is the better play, but there are pros and cons to both Strand and Stasis, so I'll kind of leave it up to you. But anyway, on Strand, we're going to be using the Shackle Grenade and we are going to be using Banner of War and Into the Fray as our aspects. These are absolute no-brainers. The reason we are taking Banner of War is because it buffs our sword damage. Now, another thing that you may not know is that recently Banner of War was changed, I believe in the Renegades patch, to improve the damage of your sword even more than it used to. So before Renegades, this used to be a 10% damage bonus, but now it is 20%. So if I was to spawn in these enemies here and I get one kill, that does 315 damage. So remember that, 315. That goes up to 378, which if you do the maths, that is a 20% bonus. So just something to keep in mind, Banner of War is now a 20% damage increase for your sword, which is absolutely massive if you're running around with Praxic Blade, which we will be. So Banner of War, plus it also heals you every time that you get stacks with it. You are essentially, if there are adds nearby, you are never going to run out of banner, so you're going to be healed constantly, going to be dealing a bunch more damage. Very good, very synergistic. Into the Fray is here because it's going to make it so destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for nearby allies. This is going to be our main source of damage resistance outside of the resist that we get from the armor set, which by the way, Woven Mail is a 45% damage resist, so stack that on top, we're even more unkillable. And we're going to be generating tangles very easily with our Praxic Blade with how we've built out the mods on it, so we'll get to that in just a moment. But we'll finish up with the fragments here on the Strand portion. We're going to go with Thread of Ascent, which is going to give me a bonus to my weapon stat, which is at 200. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Thread of Generation here to make it so I get my grenade back faster. Thread of Warding, so that if I run out of Woven Mail from my Into the Fray, I can get it back from collecting an Orb of Power, which makes things a little more consistent. Then I have Thread of Continuity to make Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects last longer. Quickly, before we talk about stats or anything else, I do want to highlight the Stasis portion of this build as well, and you'll be seeing it in the gameplay. Both the Strand and Stasis builds are very similar, but there are pros and cons to both, like I said. And for Stasis, I believe the pro is that the damage resistance you get is, number one, it's stronger. Frost Armor at maximum stacks is stronger than Woven Mail. In fact, at 8 stacks of Frost Armor, you have a 50% DR, while with Woven Mail, it's 45, so it's 5% more. Plus, getting Frost Armor is a lot easier on Stasis than it is with Strand. You can actually keep it up far more consistently than you can with Woven Mail. So with the Stasis subclass, we're going to be taking Tectonic Harvest here, which makes it so shattering a Stasis Crystal or frozen target creates a Stasis Shard, and while Tectonic Harvest is equipped, picking up Stasis Shards gives us Frost Armor. Second, we're taking Diamond Lance because this is again another source of Frost Armor. So here, if I get a kill with my Stasis ability, if I grab the Diamond Lance that it spawns, slamming the Diamond Lance will give me 2 stacks of Frost Armor. And by the way, that works for your teammates as well, in case you didn't know. It's a team-wide area of effect. So yeah, that's the reason we're taking Diamond Lance. It also gives us 3 fragment slots, which is quite nice. So in terms of the fragments, the first one we have is Whisper of Shards, where shattering a Stasis Crystal temporarily boosts our grenade recharge rate. Whisper of Conduction for some bonus stats and to make the shards track to us. Then we have Whisper of Rhyme to make our Frost Armor have increased stack count, which goes all the way up to 8, which is that 50%. Then we actually have Whisper of Chains. This one is going to make it so defeating targets while you have Frost Armor has a chance to create a Stasis Shard. And the reason we are taking that is because when you don't have your Crystal Grenade up to be able to refresh your Stasis Shards to refresh your Frost Armor, we have this here so that whenever we defeat a target, we have a small chance to create a Stasis Shard, which will refresh our Frost Armor timer. So it's a very good quality of life consistency fragment. I very much recommend taking this if you are wanting to go the Stasis angle. I believe it takes only 3 red bars to spawn a shard, so you will get this pretty often. In fact, you will be seeing from the gameplay that I essentially never run out of Frost Armor unless I am completely out of combat. Then lastly, the final fragment we have is Whisper of Torment. This one is going to make it so you gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets, and having Frost Armor increases the amount you get. This fragment is actually really good, and it works when you're blocking with the lightsaber, by the way, and I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. So if I spawn in Carl here and I make him aggressive and I get myself a little bit of Frost Armor, as you can see, look in the bottom left at my grenade energy, I am going to be getting some noticeable chunks every once in a while. There we go, see? bunch of chunks going to come back very quickly. So it's just going to be very good for maintaining your frost armor. You're going to be blocking a lot, obviously, because this is a stronghold build. So you're going to be getting your grenade energy back very quickly. So very much take Whisper of Torment, very important for the overall setup. So like I said, it is kind of up to you which subclass you want to take. Personally, I think Strand is better because yes, you have less uptime on your damage resistance, which is Woven Mail. However, your sword is dealing 20% increased damage. But if you wanted to play a little safer, you could go the stasis angle where you have more consistent damage resist that is a higher percentage, but your sword isn't dealing quite as much damage. However, you do have the benefits of freezes and shatters, which make up for the lack of damage that you would get on Strand. So stats wise, let's have a look here. For this build, I believe the optimal stats are 200 weapons and then pouring the rest into grenade and super. So I've gone purely for 200 weapons because this increases your damage by 15% versus all enemy types in PvE. So this is pretty good. Plus it also gives you those enhanced bricks whenever you make special ammo to give you more ammo for the Praxic Blade. Praxic Blade ammo isn't an issue this season because of the kinetic synthesis artifact perk. However, when this thing goes away, it's going to be pretty good to have 200 weapons so you never run out of ammo with the Praxic Blade. After that, 90 super and 90 grenade. If you have better armor than I have, you could go for 100 and 100 in both of these. However, it doesn't really matter that much. I've just settled for 90 and 93. This is here so that I get my shackle grenade back pretty often. And then I also have 90 super so that, you know, I get my super back as often as possible. But to be honest, I'm not using my super a lot in the gameplay as you've seen. It's not that important, but it is just there to have as an option. Plus, you know, in the future, if we ever get something like a new Darkness super for the Titan that is a one-off and not Blade Fury, then, you know, you'd want to have high super for that, but one can dream. So essentially just 200 weapons, then high super, high grenade. Rest doesn't matter at all. As you can see, I have 0 health. Melee doesn't matter because we're never using our melee ability. Class doesn't matter either because it doesn't have an impact on the Strand or Stasis subclasses. In terms of the armor pieces that allowed me to get this, my helmet is a gunner with a tertiary stat in super and a tuning in weapons. My Stronghold is again gunner with a tertiary stat in melee. Could be in a different one. It's not terribly optimal. Chest piece is again gunner with a tertiary stat in super and a tuning stat in weapons. Boots is specialist with a tertiary stat in melee. Again, not as optimal. Then finally, my class item is grenadier with a tertiary stat in weapons with a tuning stat in weapons as well. So how are we building the Praxic Blade for this build? Well, first of all, the form is, I believe, what matters the most. And this one, we are going with the defensive form because it states that blocking an attack immediately after guarding increases damage for a short duration. And according to the compendium, this is actually a 20% damage increase for 2 seconds. So out of all of the form perks, I believe this is the highest damage percentage because I think the offensive form gives you 16% versus mini bosses and bosses all the time, but of course it is only limited to those enemy types. And I think balance form is again around 15% against rank and file combatants, which to be honest isn't really needed. You're going to be one-tapping them with the Praxic Blade anyway. So I think defensive form is the way to go because with Stronghold, you're going to be blocking a lot. So you're going to be getting that block damage increase pretty often. So defensive form here. Then I've gone for the Forceful Blade to increase the impact. Then for the Power Core, we have the Impact Core because this is going to allow us to apply Sever or Slow, depending on the subclass that we are using, on direct damage hits. Then lastly, for the Catalyst, we are going with Hyper Blade. Surprise, surprise, this is just the best catalyst for the Praxic Blade. Blocking makes you amplified and increases your sword lunge distance. So if we have everything going, if we have the Impact Core, which applies Sever, because of the 2-piece set bonus, we also apply Exhaust. If we are also amplified from blocking, and we also have Woven Mail, resist ×4. If you stack all of those things together, you have a stupidly high amount of damage resistance, and it amounts to you basically never dying. Plus you have the benefit of amplified, making enemies less accurate when targeting you. So your fear of dying should be completely removed when you are playing with this setup. Now, to wrap things up with the artifact, the only mods that really matter are sustain perks for your sword and damage perks for your sword. So the first one we're going with is kinetic synthesis to make it so you get those kinetic bricks when you deal damage to give you ammo back for your Praxic Blade. After that, I have combination Argent Blade to increase the damage of the Praxic Blade even more, Sword Storm combo to help with disorienting combatants, and again, even more damage for the sword. And that's about it. You could go with the Void perks if you wanted to use this setup on Void Titan, for example, or you could go with Dielectric if you wanted to use it on Arc Titan. You know, despite me saying that Strand and Stasis are by far the best subclasses to pair with this, you could just as easily use Solar, Arc, or Void Titan if you wanted to. You're still going to be honestly just as unkillable, especially because the armor set does so much of the heavy lifting. It really gives you that flexibility. So if you wanted to, you could use any subclass you want, but in my opinion, I think probably Strand is the way to go just because of the damage bonus that it gives your swords. Okay, so wrapping up with the armor mods now. For the helmet, we have 2 copies of Special Ammo Finder to make it so we get lots of ammo for the Praxic Blade, then a Kinetic Siphon so that we create orbs on double kills. For the gloves, I've gone for a Firepower, an Arc Loader, and then a Fastball because just to throw my grenade faster and to help me reload my Sai Eterna if I ever choose to use that, if I ever drop my sword for anything else, but to be honest, probably won't be. Then for the chest piece, doesn't matter, resist mods like usual. For the boots, I have Stacks on Stacks, Arc Scavenger, and Innovation. Then finally, for the class item, I have Special Finisher, Powerful Attraction, and Reaper. The armor mods for this build really don't matter at all. It really is just kind of down to your subclass and how you build out your Praxic Blade. These just kind of help to support your other weapons, which in my case is the Sai Eterna, but you're barely ever going to be using this, to be honest. So as far as the optimal gameplay loop for this build is concerned, it really is just as simple as getting in there, getting a kill with your Praxic Blade to get a tangle, throw the tangle at your feet to get your woven mail stacks going. If you are playing on stasis, chuck down your crystal grenade to get started on your frost armor stacks, and after that, just block some damage, go ham against attacking enemies, and just repeat. You are going to be absolutely covered in damage resistance for an entire encounter, so you will never have to worry about dying. Your sword is going to be outputting a ton of damage, especially if you are using the Strand variant of the build, and it's just a ton of fun to use. Honestly, like I said at the beginning of the video, I was pretty skeptical about this build, but it's just grown on me. It's very fun, and again, big shout out to Stronghold Central for putting me on this wave. It is just so much fun, and I was just totally wrong mindset towards the Stronghold build. So as always, the link to the build is going to be in the description below if you want to copy hassle-free, and if you want to copy the fashion, it is also on your screen now. I think I've gone for a pretty nice looking Swordmaster look here, so if you'd like this, definitely copy. But that has brought us to the end of the video, so again, thank you very much for coming and watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.